She vanished in broad daylight. No witnesses. No clues. Just a single flip-flop left behind in a quiet college town. What happened to Brooke Wilberger would haunt a community and reveal a monster hiding in plain sight. It was a clear spring morning in Corvallis, Oregon. A quiet college town, wrapped in the comfort of routine. Birds chirped. Sidewalks shimmered under early sun. Life moved forward, peaceful. Ordinary. But then, in the space of a breath, something shattered. A 19-year-old girl stepped outside. And then, she was gone. No screams. No struggle. No witnesses. Just a single flip-flop left behind in a dormitory parking lot. Her name was Brooke Wilberger. And what happened to her would unravel a terrifying truth. One that reached far beyond the borders of this sleepy town. In the days that followed, her family would beg for answers. Her community would search every trail, knock on every door. And the world would watch, as hope began to flicker. But the monster who took her didn't stop with Brooke. Hundreds of miles away, another young woman would fight for her life. And survive. A brutal, miraculous escape that would blow the case wide open. This is not just a story of loss. It's a story of obsession. Of evil hiding in plain sight. And of the relentless pursuit of justice. This is the story of Brooke Wilberger. And the man who thought he'd gotten away with murder. Before her name was printed on missing posters. Before her face became a symbol of loss. Brooke Wilberger was simply Brooke. She was 19 years old. Fresh-faced. Radiant. The kind of young woman who lit up a room without trying. The youngest of 6 children, Brooke grew up in a close-knit, loving family in Veneta, Oregon. From a young age, Brooke stood out, not for her loudness or rebellion, but for her kindness. She was quiet, thoughtful, the one who noticed when others were hurting. She volunteered at church. Babysat for neighbors. Always smiling. Always asking how you were doing before talking about herself. Brooke was a devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Her faith wasn't just a part of her life, it was the center of it. She believed in service, modesty, honesty. She lived with purpose, even when no one was watching. In 2004, Brooke had just completed her freshman year at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. She had come home to Oregon for the summer. But instead of staying in Veneta, she moved to Corvallis to live with her sister and brother-in-law. Corvallis was a quiet college town. Surrounded by pine trees and sleepy neighborhoods, it seemed like the kind of place where nothing truly bad could happen. The kind of place where doors were still left unlocked, and where neighbors waved from their porches. Brooke had plans that summer. She wanted to work, save money, spend time with her family. She was thinking about majoring in English. Or maybe elementary education. She loved kids. She wasn't chasing fame or fortune. She was chasing goodness. A quiet, meaningful life surrounded by faith, family, and purpose. Her siblings described her as the heart of the family. Her mother said she had an old soul. She was the kind of daughter who left little notes on the fridge. The kind of sister who stayed up late to talk about life and boys and dreams. The kind of friend who remembered your birthday even when no one else did. There are home videos of Brooke from those years. Blonde hair tucked behind her ears. Laughing at something off camera. Eyes full of light. The sound of her voice, soft but sure. She was just good. Not perfect. But real. Kind. The kind of person you hope your child will grow up to be. On the morning of May 24, 2004, Brooke woke up early. She had agreed to help her sister clean an apartment complex near the Oregon State University campus. It was the kind of errand she'd done 100 times. Nothing special. Just a Monday morning. No one could have known it would be the last time anyone saw her alive. Brooke had her whole life ahead of her. Until one morning in May, when everything changed. Monday, May 24, 2004. The day began like so many others. Brooke Wilberger woke up early in her sister's Corvallis apartment. The plan was simple: help clean a few light fixtures and outdoor railings at an apartment complex managed by her brother-in-law. She wore a blue hoodie, gray sweatpants, flip-flops. Nothing about that morning seemed out of the ordinary. Local officers arrived at the scene. They canvassed the area, knocking on doors, asking questions. Brooke's family, her parents, her siblings, rushed to Corvallis to join the search. Volunteers gathered. Posters were printed. The community mobilized with incredible speed. But despite their efforts, there were no clear leads. No camera footage. No witnesses. Nothing but a shoe. The search expanded. Police brought in K-9 units. Helicopters were deployed. They scoured fields, parks, wooded areas, and nearby roads. They checked registries for local offenders. Interviewed anyone with a history. A map of Corvallis quickly filled with flags, each one marking a place they checked. Each one a place she wasn't. For investigators, the possibilities narrowed quickly. This wasn't a case of a runaway. Brooke had no reason to disappear. She was deeply connected to her family. Grounded in her faith. She had left everything behind, even her flip-flop. The question began to shift. Not where Brooke had gone, but who had taken her. The FBI was called in. And by the end of the day, the search for Brooke Wilberger had become a statewide effort. As night fell over Corvallis, one thing became tragically clear. Something terrible had happened. And whoever had taken Brooke had vanished without a trace. Around 10:30 a.m., Brooke stepped outside. Just for a moment. To wipe down some light posts near the parking lot. Her sister stayed inside, just a few steps away. But within minutes, Brooke was gone. No noise. No signs of a struggle. No one saw anyone leave. No one heard anything strange. Just silence. Her sister noticed the absence almost immediately. She walked outside, and found only Brooke's flip-flop lying on the pavement. Brooke's car keys, her wallet, her cell phone, everything she owned, were still inside. At first, there was confusion. Maybe she'd gone to grab something. Maybe she was nearby. But minutes passed. Then hours. Panic began to settle in. By that afternoon, her family had called the police. And the search began. As the hours turned into days, hope became more difficult to hold on to. Brooke Wilberger had now been missing for 24 hours. Her photo was everywhere, taped to storefronts, posted online, handed out at gas stations. A young woman with bright eyes, a soft smile, and no reason to disappear. Search parties combed the countryside. Volunteers walked in long, silent lines across fields and forests, calling her name. Helicopters buzzed overhead. Investigators followed up on every call, every tip, no matter how small. Brooke's family stayed close to the search center, often sleeping just hours at a time. Her parents held press conferences. They answered every question. Pleaded for help. Prayed. Her mother, Cammie, stood behind microphones with a steady voice, but her eyes said everything. Her daughter was missing. And someone out there knew something. The media arrived quickly. What began as a local mystery was now a national story. Missing college student in Oregon. Family seeks answers. Where is Brooke Wilberger? As attention grew, so did pressure on police. Investigators turned their attention to possible suspects. Registered sex offenders in the area were interviewed. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses was reviewed, frame by frame. A white van had reportedly been seen in the area around the time Brooke disappeared. It became the focus of every press briefing. Dozens of white vans were pulled over, searched, and cleared. None of them led anywhere. The frustration was palpable. Forensic teams combed the apartment complex. Dirt was sifted by hand. Grass samples taken. But there was no sign of a struggle. No blood. No fingerprints. No trail. Brooke had simply vanished. Criminal profilers were brought in. Experts in abductions, in victimology. They studied Brooke's habits. Her personality. Her faith. Everything pointed in one direction. This was targeted. Intentional. This wasn't random. Somewhere, someone had watched her. Chosen her. Waited for the right moment. And in a window of less than 5 minutes, acted. As the investigation stretched into its second week, the leads began to thin. Calls slowed. Hope flickered. But Brooke's family refused to give up. They kept searching. They kept praying. And behind closed doors, detectives worked around the clock. Trying to connect the dots that, for now, didn't seem to exist. And then, hundreds of miles away, in a different state, a different city, something happened. A young woman, alone. A man approaches. He offers help. She hesitates, but something feels off. What happened next would not only save her life, it would finally bring detectives closer to the truth about Brooke Wilberger. November 2004, nearly 6 months since Brooke Wilberger vanished. Hundreds of leads. Thousands of man-hours. And still, no Brooke. But then, over 1,000 miles away, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, another young woman had an encounter. And this time, the outcome was different. 22-year-old Natasha was walking through a university parking lot. Midday. Bright sun. Crowded campus. Just like Brooke had been. A man approached her. Clean-cut. Calm. He looked like a student or maybe a campus employee. He said she had a flat tire. Offered to help. At first, she hesitated. Something about his voice. His eyes. But he was persistent. Natasha walked toward her car. And that's when it happened. The man struck her, hard, then forced her into his vehicle. Duct tape. Rope. Threats. She was tied up. Held down. Driven across state lines. He took her to a remote area of Arizona. Told her not to scream. Said no one would ever find her. But Natasha fought. She stayed calm. She waited for the right moment. When he stopped to untie her, she bolted, running barefoot through the desert, screaming until someone heard her. By pure strength and instinct, she survived. Police arrested the man within hours. His name? Joel Patrick Courtney. A convicted sex offender. A man who had slipped under the radar for years. But when detectives ran his background, they uncovered something chilling. Months earlier, Courtney had been in Oregon. He had family there. He had a criminal record. And, most importantly, he had been in Corvallis on the very day Brooke disappeared. Suddenly, detectives in Oregon were listening closely. They reviewed travel records. Car rentals. Surveillance footage. Courtney's vehicle had matched the description of the white van seen near the apartment complex. And in Natasha's case, DNA was collected. Evidence that would become key. FBI agents flew to New Mexico. They questioned Courtney. He denied everything about Brooke Wilberger. But the details were too similar. A bright, young woman. Middle of the day. No warning. Abducted without a trace. The cases echoed each other, hauntingly. Detectives now had their first real suspect. And for the first time in 6 months, Brooke's case had momentum. But there was still one terrible question left unanswered. Where was she? In early 2005, Joel Courtney sat behind bars in New Mexico, awaiting trial for the brutal abduction of Natasha, not yet charged in connection with Brooke Wilberger. But behind the scenes, Oregon investigators were closing in. They poured through Courtney's history, his jobs, his movements, his behavior. And what they found was unsettling. Courtney had been in Corvallis just days before Brooke vanished. He had no alibi. No legitimate reason for being near that apartment complex. And his criminal record was longer than anyone had realized. As forensic teams reprocessed the evidence from the May 24th scene, they made a critical breakthrough. DNA. A trace found on a flip-flop. A partial match from a cigarette but discarded near the apartment. When tested, it came back to Joel Courtney. It wasn't enough to make an arrest, yet. But it was enough to keep digging. Detectives traveled to New Mexico again. They interviewed Courtney. He denied knowing Brooke. Denied being in the area. Denied everything. But the more he talked, the more they saw it. The cracks. The inconsistencies. The subtle shifts in his story. Meanwhile, Natasha's testimony continued to strengthen the case. The way he lured her. The control. The duct tape. The calmness. The violence. It matched everything they feared had happened to Brooke. In 2008, 4 years after her disappearance, Joel Courtney was formally charged with the kidnapping, rape, and murder of Brooke Wilberger. And still, the Wilberger family had no closure. No body. No burial. Just pain, and waiting. But then, in 2009, something changed. Joel Courtney's defense team approached prosecutors with an offer. A confession. In exchange for taking the death penalty off the table, Courtney would tell them where Brooke was. After 5 years of silence, he agreed to speak. In a small, closed-door session, Joel Courtney confessed to abducting Brooke Wilberger. He admitted he had seen her outside the apartment complex that morning. Chosen her. Waited for the right moment. And taken her. He told investigators where he had left her remains. In a remote forested area, tucked off a logging road, deep in the Oregon wilderness. Investigators went to the location. And there, they found her. Brooke Wilberger, after 5 long years, was finally brought home. The news devastated the community. But it also gave her family something they had gone far too long without: answers. In 2009, Joel Courtney pled guilty to all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And for the Wilbergers, a chapter, however painful, had finally closed. In the end, Joel Courtney was behind bars. He would never walk free again. And Brooke Wilberger was finally laid to rest. But justice, when it comes so late, is never complete. It doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't erase the pain. Or bring back the years that were lost. For Brooks' family, the trial was not a moment of triumph, but a quiet reckoning. The final confirmation of a nightmare they had feared for 5 years. In the courtroom, her mother read a statement. She was everything a parent could want. And now, all we have are memories. Brooks' life was short, but filled with meaning. She was a woman of faith, of kindness, of deep purpose. And that spirit didn't end when her life did. In the years since her death, the Wilberger family has worked to preserve her legacy. They created the Brooke Wilberger Foundation, an organization committed to supporting victims' families, spreading awareness, and improving how law enforcement handles missing persons cases. They speak to schools, to churches, to anyone willing to listen. Not just about what happened, but about how to protect others. About how to stay vigilant. About how to live with grace through unimaginable loss. The impact of Brooke's story stretches far beyond Corvallis. Her name became part of the national dialogue on abduction and violence against women. Her case led to renewed conversations about offender tracking, early release loopholes, and community safety. Most of all, her story reminds us just how quickly a life can be stolen, and how deeply one family's love can endure. Brooke's grave rests under a canopy of trees in her hometown. Her headstone reads simply, "Our beautiful Brooke. Until we meet again." She was 19 years old. And in her short time here, she touched more lives than she ever knew. May we remember her not for the horror of how she was taken, but for the light she left behind. This is the story of Brooke Wilberger. Do not forget to like, subscribe and share.